I tried to play on it, and like I got involved with a few organizations that were solely for, military casting. And don't get me wrong, like so in order to join the union, like the SAG-AFTRA union, there's a few ways to do it, but the way I went was acquiring 3 vouchers. And to do that, you can work as an extra on some major titles, or you can somehow, like, let's say you bump a 1-day extra and they bump you up on set to having a line, and you have a certain amount of words that you speak on camera, then you're automatically eligible to join the union. So I did mine through the 3 vouchers, and 2 of those vouchers were on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I got that job through this military casting organization. It's called Combat Casting. There's a Marine named Jody Hart. He runs that. And he called me up at work, and he was like, "Hey man, I see your name and your profile on the website. Do you want to come and do this job?" And I was like, hell yeah. I called in sick for 2 days, and I went to Burbank and shot on set of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is amazing.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. Are you guys doing video production for multiple companies, or all this stuff you're talking about just your stuff?
So the stuff we were talking about here is just mostly for our stuff, but we're starting to do work with other companies too.
But are you generating the footage and stuff to push out for a company that you guys are doing, or just for fun?
It's a little bit of both. Like we did a video with Echelon Energy Drink. That was like a collab video. So it was more for them, but it really fell in line with all the stuff that we did. So,
and it's all based around skateboarding?
For the most
largely?
part. Yeah. Pretty largely, yeah. But we're trying to kind of put feelers out there to do other things as well, not just skateboarding.
Talk to me about your younger life. Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up at?
So I grew up in Fremont, California, which is up in the Bay Area. It's like maybe 20 minutes north of San Jose. So I spent the first 14 years of my life there. Started skateboarding when I was like 5. I started riding my first skateboard, but I didn't really get into it until I was like 13, that's when it became like, religious for me. But other than that, I was just going to school, playing ice hockey, and that's
Northern California is known for its ice hockey.
Yeah. So I did a lot of that.
And big family, brothers, sisters?
It was a big family because growing up, we lived with my grandparents, and some of my aunts and uncles were still in the house too. So that kind of made it a big family for me. But as far as my immediate family, I just had, I have a younger brother.
Who got you into skateboarding?
Just me. I would see kids skateboarding on the street, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And then I asked my mom for a skateboard, and then that was it.
In school, was skateboarding what took up your life, or were you ever into sports or anything else?
Just the ice hockey. We'd have like maybe 2 practices a week, and we'd play a game on the weekend. But that was about it. Other than that, like I was just skating.
Do you have aspirations of taking it more than just a hobby as a kid looking back on it?
Yeah, I wanted to be like a professional skateboarder. And there was a good 3 or 4 years where I was actually working towards that, like trying to get sponsorships and trying to get, better at skateboarding and push myself a little more to the limits. And then just life happened. I think that was around, I was maybe 17. I had this flat rail that I would skate every day. And I was trying to get these grinds. They're called Smith grinds. And I started locking into these grinds, and I was like coming really close to getting them. And then one of the legs on the flat bar broke. And so I didn't have that to skate anymore. And I feel like after that, it was either my drive kind of died down, or I just didn't have access to anything to where I could keep progressing. So I wasn't skating as much. And then not long after, I started thinking about, what schools I was going to go to and what I was going to do for, a career. And that just kind of took the place of skateboarding, and I kind of moved towards that way, still skating a little bit on the side, but wasn't as serious as it was before.
Was replacing that flat bar not something that was readily available to you?
So with me, it was just me and skateboarding. Like, I didn't really have the support of my parents. I got that flat bar from a buddy whose dad was a welder, and he hooked him up with that flat bar. And so he gave it to me, and I'm like, this is the best thing in the world, and I couldn't ask my dad to fix this flat bar because it wouldn't happen. He didn't have that skill set, and I didn't even think to go back and ask my buddy to ask his dad to fix it. I didn't really want to get into people's business like that,
Right.
and ask too much of people. They already gave me the thing, so I can't, hey, can you fix it for me, So that was pretty much it for that.
Were your parents looking at it as pretty much you were just wasting your time doing this?
Probably. I mean, they didn't tell me to stop skateboarding and, but there was never anything like today you see parents that are just so about their kids and skateboarding. They'll take them to skate parks, they'll sign them up for skate camps, and they'll pretty much do everything that they can do for them to provide that support to excel in the sport. And I can't recall really any of my friends at the time whose parents were like that. And my parents weren't anywhere near that. They were just kind of like, okay, you want to go do that? Go ahead and do that.
What year are we talking about for you when you were really trying to push forward on it?
This is probably like 99.
Okay. So you're talking a complete other generation of parents who have actually grown up and seen what skateboarding has become or what it can become from a sports or athlete standpoint.
Exactly.
Where your parents were probably like mine, and they looked at it as just, you were just screwing around.
Yeah, just out goofing off. That's pretty much how they saw it,
What was your parents' goals for you growing up? Did they want college for you? What were they thinking?
I think they did want college for me. But I think there came a time in my high school years where they figured, I don't think college is going to happen for this guy. So we'll just see what happens, And I, towards the end of high school, they started talking to me about just like, either community colleges or vocational schools to learn a trade or whatever. And at the time, I had an uncle that I was really close to. He was a fire medic. And, I'd always see him leaving and coming home in uniform. And I always thought that was cool. So as soon as I graduated high school, I signed up for an EMT program. And I hopped into that, and I got my EMT license, and I started running, BLS calls with a local ambulance company. And so at that point, I had aspirations to become a firefighter, paramedic, or even go into like nursing school or something like that. And my parents were happy with that. It was something respectable, and I wasn't going to be out killing myself. So I rode that train for a little bit, and then somehow ended up in a Marine Corps recruiter's office. And man, those guys, they know how to get you.
Isn't that how every story starts?
I guess so.
And I ended up in a Marine Corps recruiter's office.
I woke up in the recruiter's office, came to, and I was signing my name on the dotted line. But no. But yeah, so I had a friend that I would skate with. Like his name's Justin. He's my best friend from the Bay Area. Like if I was skating at that time, it was with that guy. And he was the first one to hop in that recruiting office, and then obviously told me about it. And I went to check it out and just to see what it was about. And
did it just kind of come out of the blue for him? I mean, do you remember him talking about it leading up to it?
No, I don't even know how he ended up there. And he was like the last person that you would think would end up there, And then I went and listened to him, and they seemed like some cool dudes, which recruiters tend to do. And they just kind of snagged me.
And so signing on that dotted line, were you at that point thinking it was just going to be a 4-year enlistment and out, or were you thinking long-term?
I was not thinking long-term. Yeah. I don't think I started thinking long-term anything until I was like in my late 20s.
Like yesterday.
Probably yesterday. Yeah. We'll call it late 30s. Yeah. So in my mind, I was just going to just do 4 and see how it felt and then go from there.
4 years you did it, came out. Was there ever a point in that 4 years where you thought maybe I'll extend? Or was it pretty much from day one, 4 years, I'm out?
There was one day I thought I would go a little bit more. And that was, I was in Iraq for my second deployment. And the monitor for Motor T, he was actually my old gunnery sergeant from the shop that I was at. He actually left before we went on our first deployment to be the monitor for Motor T. And he came out to the base we were at, which is Camp Korean Village. And he was like, dude, I remember you. Where you want to go? And I had like full pick of wherever I wanted to go. Nice little re-enlistment bonus. And like hearing those perks of re-enlisting at that time, it really made me think, because, I had my wife at home. We had our son at home too, who was, I think he was maybe like 2 or 3, I want to say, maybe even younger. So I started thinking about them and what another enlistment could do for me. And so I told him, I was like, you know what, I gotta call my wife about this. So I dipped out from his office and I went to the phone center and called my wife and talked about it. And she just asked me if I was going to be happy. That was her only question. She didn't care about the money. She didn't care about where we were going. She just asked me if I was going to be happy. And I couldn't give her a solid answer on that. So we kind of both just went with, maybe we'll see how things go on the outside. So I ended up turning them down.
So she would have supported you had you made that decision to stay in.
Oh, yeah.
So you weren't getting pressure from the home side is what I'm getting at of, hey, yeah, you had your fun for 4 years. Now it's...
Yeah, no pressure either way, which was, I'm really thankful for that. So I got to make that decision on my own for the most part.
When you were close to cycling out, were you starting to plan for afterwards, or were you just kind of taking it as it comes?
Yeah, my plan was to go to nursing school, to go back to the healthcare field. So I actually got out, I want to say it was like 2 months early on a school cut, just to start my prerequisites for a nursing program down in San Diego.
Now, your plan was to stay in the San Diego area, or was that just where you got accepted at?
My plan was to stay down there. My wife was pretty well planted down there. I came to love the place. Still love San Diego. So that's just what I went for.
Into school with aiming back towards now nursing, not fire paramedics.
Right.
Any issues with your transition out? Any regrets once you got out and like, maybe I should have stayed in?
It was pretty minimal. I mean, I had a really good support system. My wife and her family. I have like the best in-laws that anyone could ever ask for, So they were very supportive with whatever I wanted to do. The only things I ever really regretted was not taking the time to appreciate the guys that I was with the whole time. Like when I was in, my focus was mainly on just like finishing up and getting out. So any opportunity I had to get off base and be away from the Marine Corps, I would take it. And, I would hear all my buddies on Monday talking about, partying at the barracks or going here, doing that with this person and that person. And these are all people that I knew and I liked and I respected. And then when I got out and I started not seeing these people every day, I really missed them. And so I regretted mostly just not taking advantage of having those people there and spending time with them.
Did you end up losing contact with most of the guys you served with? Or a large number of them?
A large number of them, yeah. I'd say there's only a handful that I talk to on a regular basis now.
Did you, going back a little bit, did you take your skateboard with you to deployment?
Not on deployment. No. There was probably a really good chunk of time where I didn't touch my skateboard at all. Like when we'd be back at Pendleton, I'd cruise around here and there, but I think maybe I would go months at a time without even touching it.
What do you think caused you to kind of, was it just the work productivity and the operational tempo that kept you away from it, or did you just not have an interest in it?
I think it wasn't a lack of interest, but I think it was just more of outside influences. Other things just held priority over it. Sometimes you'd have so many things going on that, hopping on the board and spending an hour doing that is kind of the last thing you're thinking about, which is totally opposite from me today. And I wish I would have been on a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, as with everything, kind of life just kind of gets in the way.
Are your kids taken to it too?
No,
No.
not at all. There was a time when my son would cruise around with me, but to be honest, I probably pushed him a little bit more than I should have to try and do things and get over certain fears.
No parent has done that. No parent,
Yeah, right.
No parent has tried to push their kid more.
It's a new thing.
You're the first one.
Yeah.
You know what? You should write a book.
I totally should. It would sell.
Nobody's heard that story before at all. So you're in nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
What ended up happening with that? Because obviously today you're not a nurse.
Not a nurse today.
Nor are you a paramedic.
Nope. I don't work in healthcare at all, and I'm okay with it. So I got out, started the prerequisites, and then at the same time I started working for a healthcare company, and I got, I think, almost halfway through nursing school, and I failed a course, which was the OB course, going through like obstetrics and
babies and all
babies
that.
and stuff like that. And it was kind of a perfect storm in a shitty way, because when I was doing the prereqs, there were 2 that I didn't need. So in my head, I'm like, I'm not taking a class I don't need. I'm just not going to do it. I got in the program and I failed the class. And in order to get back in the class, I had to go retake those prereqs. And at the time, I was just going through a weird mental state, and it was a setback of failing the class. And then I counted those 2 other classes I had to take as like additional setbacks, and it was just a little overwhelming for me. And then I just really thought if that's what I really wanted to do, and at the time it wasn't, so I threw in the towel for it, and that was the end of my nursing career.
Was there anything starting to pique your interest at that point, or were you, looking back on it, were you just growing disinterested in nursing?
There was a little bit of disinterest there, and I think that mixed in with all the stuff that was going on around the time I filled that class is what kind of led up to it. But I also had a huge interest in film and acting as well, and so I kind of looked at this setback as an opportunity to do something else. And
had you acted or anything to this point?
I did a few things. Like I had a buddy who was taking a media class, and one of his classes was like a small film class, so he needed a few actors for a short film. So I helped him out, and I did that, and I thought it was really fun. And I did like all the drama classes in high school and in junior high, and I always thought those were a really good time. And then, I would watch a lot of like behind the scenes documentaries for movies that I really enjoyed. Just saw how cool the collaborative spirit for all that was, and just so many people working together towards this common goal. And it was just so creative and so fun. And I was like, man, that's something I really want to do. So
was there a single catalyst that pushed you to give it a go, or was it just, I've got nothing else, so let me give this a shot?
I felt like I tried to do something in a traditional route that all of my family would respect and appreciate. And in my mind, it didn't work out. So I wanted to do something extreme that you don't really hear a lot of people, proclaim that type of thing, And like my mindset was like, I've been to Iraq twice. I've done this. I've done that. Why can't I do this? Why not me? So I just went for it.
What was your wife's opinion of this job choice?
Still very supportive. And I remember the day that I had to like
tell her
and tell her parents, who we were living with at the time, like, hey, I'm not going to be a nurse anymore. I'm going to be an actor. So that was interesting, but still, like, surprisingly, they were just so supportive.
Well, they figured whatever restaurant you were going to be a waiter at, they were going to get good service.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. But at the same time, I was still working for that healthcare company, and, I was still pulling in a paycheck, and I figured as long as I'm providing for my family the way that I need to be, then I should be okay pursuing this career.
Did you go down the route of actual formal acting training in school and that type stuff?
So not like a formal school. I took a lot of acting classes and a lot of improv classes, and I just when I made that proclamation, I just immediately started doing the research of what it took and who I needed to talk to and what steps I needed to take, and then I just started following them.
When was the first time you saw yourself at home or somewhere else where you actually saw yourself on the screen? Unexpected, or maybe, I don't want to say unexpected, you knew it was going to be coming on, but to see yourself on the screen, when was the first time?
So the big first commercial I did was for Jeep. It was when they first launched their Renegade, and I actually shot that commercial on my birthday, so that was kind of a special day for me, you know. And then like a year goes by, and we're watching something, and then the commercial pops on, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the Renegade. I wonder if, oh my God, there I am. And then that was it. Like the whole family was there and they saw it, and it was just really cool, because that's what you work for, is stuff like that. So to see it actually pop up on screen, you know, that gave me this encouragement to keep going, that it's possible. You know, if they're going to take me for this and put me on the screen, then why not take me for other things? You know, were there speaking, or was it a speaking role, or just on camera? Yeah, that one wasn't a speaking role. It was just on camera. A couple shots of me driving, a couple shots of me just engaging with other people my age and whatever. Very social type commercial, you know, stuff like that. For someone who's never done a commercial, if they've got an interest maybe starting that route, is a year's separation from when you film it to when you might see it on TV about normal? It could be sooner than that. It depends on how fast they're trying to push this thing out. But I mean, I've been on projects where I'll see it within the next like 3 to 4 months, but then I've also done projects where it's over a year until I saw it. So it kind of stretches out. And for someone interested in getting into it, you mentioned taking some acting classes and taking improv classes. Mm-hmm. Is there one or the other that you feel is better? And is it dependent on what you want to do as far as an actor? Yeah, totally depends on what you want to do. So like I took the improv classes that was more for commercial for me. Because when you go in for a commercial audition, it's like this whole gray area. There's no really black and white to a commercial audition because there's no dialogue. So it's all just based off of like facial expressions and reactions and how hyped you can get about whatever it is you're going for, you know? And I just think the improv classes really helped to kind of feel out the room and, you know, find the tone of the product and of what the commercial was about and just kind of ride with it. In looking back on it, well, how soon did you get a manager? And is a manager something that you need to have right away? You don't need an agent. You don't need to have an agent right away. You don't even need a manager right away, especially with today. Things are so different that, you know, when I first started, everything that I did was on my own. Like all the stuff that I know how to do with a camera today is because I wanted to know how to create my own footage for my own acting reel, just so that I can work on my craft and I can have something to show people when it's time for me to get an agent or a manager. So for a person who's fresh into acting, I think the last thing you want to think about is like, how do I get an agent? The first thing you want to think about is, how can I start practicing? How can I start working? And that's solely on just creating yourself. Did the interest in learning the camera aspect come as soon as you wanted to be an actor, or has that come more in time? A little more in time. In the beginning, I was dependent on people who knew how to do that stuff. Like people who knew how to write, who knew how to direct, who knew how to edit, who knew how to film. You know, I couldn't do anything, you know, if those people weren't on board with me. And so I just wanted to depend on people less and less. So I just started learning more and more about everything. And then around the time when I started booking professional roles and actually seeking an agent, I could wear every hat. You know, I was writing my own scripts. I was shooting solo. I was doing my own editing, and, you know, I was casting to have other people act with me in these scenes. So I just tried to make myself as best well-rounded as possible. And that's when I started putting feelers out for representation and stuff like that. And getting actually
what would be called finally in the business? Because you've been on multiple TV shows now and had multiple appearances on the same show, correct?
Not on the same show. Around the time the pandemic hit, I booked a reoccurring role in a show called Good Trouble, and I shot one episode, and then pandemic started to get ugly again, so they kind of took out the non-essential reoccurring roles and just kind of moved forward with the principal roles on that one. So I was kind of disappointed about that, but to answer your question, I've only appeared on single shows one time.
And getting to that level, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, for somebody who's got an interest in it, I'm assuming that's, for most people, the normal progression is get yourself the one-off spots and then grow them from there. Mm-hmm. How hard is it to get those? Is it like they portray in the movies where it's just audition after audition and you're just hoping?
That's exactly how it is. It's really hard even to get like a one-liner. To speak on camera on a professional set on a well-known TV show is very difficult to get. Like I did work on Criminal Minds, and I went in and I read for that show 11 times.
For the same character?
Different characters, different episodes, but 11 different times. And that's a good thing because, you know, in that industry, that's called booking the room, making it to where the casting director likes what you do, but you don't necessarily fit for this one, but I liked you enough to call you back for another one and 11 times more. And finally it worked out. And that ended up being one of my biggest co-star roles, was on that show.
So getting called back those multiple times and not necessarily getting it is actually still a success.
Absolutely.
It's not, you're not to look at it as a failure, because like you say, mm-hmm. if they didn't like you at all, they would have never even called you back.
Correct. So
you're taking those small wins as mm-hmm. you get them.
Exactly. And auditioning, that is the job. When you're on set and you're doing the character, that's a perk. Like, the real work is in the audition. So if you can get to a point where you're being called back multiple times by the same casting director, you are doing your job and you're doing it well.
Do you have a good, clear understanding of the character that you're auditioning for, or is it a lot of it kind of just cold?
It depends on how big the character is. Like, if it's just a one-liner, you're not going to get a lot of backstory on it. And so that's when you really, that's when improv can come into play too, because you take what they do give you, which is a little bit of a breakdown, and then you kind of just build on that environment and that universe on your own, and then you put that into your performance, which sounds crazy to say one line, but they notice those things. They notice the look you give before you say your line, or how you react to the line that you're responding to. Like, everything encompasses this one line. It's this bubble, and they look at that bubble to see where you put yourself, and that's pretty much how they make their casting, is not from the line itself, but from everything else.
How you sell the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For your experience, somebody coming out of the military wanting to go into the acting industry, play on that or play it down?
I tried to play on it. And I got involved with a few organizations that were solely for, military casting. And don't get me wrong, so in order to join the union, like the SAG-AFTRA union, there's a few ways to do it, but the way I went was acquiring 3 vouchers. And to do that, you can work as an extra on some major titles, or you can somehow, let's say you bump a 1-day extra and they bump you up on set to having a line, and you have a certain amount of words that you speak on camera, then you're automatically eligible to join the union. So I did mine through the 3 vouchers, and 2 of those vouchers were on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I got that job through this military casting organization. It's called Combat Casting. There's a Marine named Jody Hart. He runs that. And he called me up at work, and he was like, "Hey man, I see your name and your profile on the website. Do you want to come and do this job?" And I was like, "Hell yeah." I called in sick for 2 days, and I went to Burbank and shot on set of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is amazing. And then I got my 2 vouchers, and then after that I worked a little bit, and you can work without joining because it's a good amount of money to join the union, to pay your dues up front. So I worked until I had to join, and then I went ahead and joined.
And what's the tipping point for when you are forced to join?
I think I'm having trouble remembering the time frame now, but I think you can work now I could be totally wrong on this, but I think you can work like 30 days on union jobs before you turn into a must join status. So if you book another one, you're going to have to join before you go and do that job.
So basically, there's probably no way to make a living and not join.
If you want to make the real money and do what every actor wants to do, you got to join the union.
Are you still at a point, even doing these potentially one line or single role events, still don't need an agent or a manager to do this? Or when's that tipping point?
So the thing with that is casting for these big professional TV shows that you see on Netflix or whatever streaming service that you're on, all those are going to be contracted through union certified casting agents and talent agents. So there are websites that you can go and see casting breakdowns for projects that are going out, but I'm not going to see the breakdowns for like the new Marvel show for the characters that they're looking for. I'm not going to see those. You have to have a union certified agent to go in there and submit you for those roles. So once you want to start doing the big things, that's when you need an agent. You won't be able to find those on your own.
So you could potentially do smaller, and if this is the wrong term, but like independent work.
Absolutely.
Without necessarily needing an agent or a manager.
Yeah. There's a lot of short films going out, student films. They don't pay much, but some of them are, really talented independent filmmakers that want to operate outside of the union guidelines. Some of it's for cost. Some of it's just, because they don't want to deal with paperwork and red tape, and they just want to execute their vision the way that they want to do it. And some of those pay pretty well, and some of them don't. Like a lot of the stuff that I've done leading up to that, I did for free just so I can build up my resume and acting reel, But there are also, especially nowadays, a lot of commercials that you see on TV that are not union. So people who are out there submitting themselves, they can find those projects and still do those projects. So
going backwards then, for being that voice of advice for somebody starting right now, where's the starting point for the average person? Let's assume they're not thinking, and maybe I'm underselling everyone, they don't want to end up on the next Marvel movie. Maybe they just want to slug it out at the lower end. Mm-hmm. Where's a good starting point? You mentioned being able to find those roles. Where does somebody go to look for that?
So you'd go to so on the commercial side of things, you would go to a website called LA Casting. I think they recently changed their name to Casting Networks. So that's more commercial related. But if you wanted to find more independent film, short film, where there's actually like character depth and story involved, then you can go to a website called Actors Access. And you can create an account and fill out your profile. You can upload your resume and acting reel, and then you can start submitting yourself for all these projects. But even before that, I would go on social media and just simply look for groups in your area. Like there are a ton of like Facebook film and acting groups out there. And a lot of filmmakers will go there and post breakdowns for characters they're looking for projects that they're working on. And it's an easy way to network, to meet people who are still kind of, I don't want to say like lower on the totem pole, but a lot of people that are still starting out, whether it's an actor starting out or a filmmaker starting out, they can all kind of meet there and work together. And the networking part of that is like where it's at, because you start to build your group of people that you're comfortable working with. Acting is it's a very vulnerable thing that not a lot of people realize. You think you just go and goof off in front of a camera, but if you're really trying to tap into something, into a place in your head to portray a certain emotion, like there's a real sense of vulnerability there. And you have to be comfortable with the people that you're with in order to find that. So I think finding that base of people to find your group is a really big part of that.
How much would you say to embrace what you refer to as acting for free or giving back aspect of it? This may sound like an overgeneralized question, but is that a vital part of kind of getting your foot in that door, is being available on a free basis?
Totally. And it's kind of a bummer, because as an actor, you're going to work for free a lot. It's going to happen. As a filmmaker, it's differently. Like, if I'm coming with gear and with a skill set, like, oftentimes those people aren't going to be okay working for free. Some of them will, just because maybe they have, a vision they want to execute quickly, and, they're not prepared to pay an actor, so they're not going to, call it upon themselves to be paid for it as well. It's just something that they want to do for the love of it, But as an actor, you're going to be working for free a lot.
Jumping ahead now, you've actually, would you say you've officially crossed that bridge and doing more of the production side of it? Or is that where you're kind of leaning towards going in the future?
So at the present time, I am more in the production side of it, behind the camera. But I still do spend a lot of time in front of the camera, because that's what I love. And I think right now, working with the guys at Thrash and Raid, that's helped me to find a very happy medium of the two. Because when the pandemic hit, acting changed a lot, especially for an actor at my level, which is still low level, even with the stuff that I've done. Like I have a toe in the door, really, compared to other people. And when the pandemic hit, the audition process changed so much. Before, you'd be called into the office, you'd actually meet with the casting directors, and you'd get to feel the room, you get to feel the energy, and you would get to play off of their reactions. And once the pandemic hit, everything went to a virtual kind of thing where you would self-tape at home and you'd send your tapes out, which is great because, you don't have to drive, to LA or anywhere. You can do it all at the comfort of your own home, and you can do as many takes as you want on the character until you're happy with it, and then send it off, whereas if you go into the office, you get one shot, maybe two, and then that's it, but at the same time, you don't get to feel the energy. You don't get to react. And since it's being self-taped and everyone's doing it on their own, for a role that maybe before they would only call 100 people in, now they can call 1,000 people in, just because everyone can self-tape on their own and send it in. So everything became so saturated. And I have friends that are really well known in the acting community, and they haven't booked anything in over a year just because of the saturation. So I may have traveled off the point of your question with that.
It actually leads me into something. So I see it almost as a double-edged sword. Pandemic hit, everything went virtual. So yes, for a lot of actors who were normally working in maybe what we'll refer to as a smaller pond of other actors, now there's a bigger pool.
Right.
But from the flip side, if there was some guy or girl in the middle of Iowa who had an interest in acting, who didn't necessarily have the ability to travel to LA or New York, can now do it virtually. So there is that double-edged sword side of it. Where I was going to go ultimately, though, going forward long-term, do you see the casting directors and movie producers still embracing the virtual, or are they wanting it more back in person?
I think for a logistical standpoint, they would stay virtual because of cost of office space and operations. But for the art of filmmaking and acting, I believe that they want people back in the office.
They want that. They want to see that interaction.
They want to feel the energy. They want to see a three-dimensional version of you. They want to hear every tone in your voice. They want to feel it. So I think they really want people to come back in.
And you've already mentioned the work you're doing with Thrash and Raid, and I've seen the social media postings. And granted, they are tongue-in-cheek and they're meant to be funny. From something like that, though, is that a good starting point for somebody to start building their resume?
I would say any time in front of a camera is a good starting point. And if you're trying to get into filmmaking, anytime behind the camera is a good starting point. So whatever you can do in that world, do it. Even if you're making just complete cringe that only you think is funny, do it.
And just put it out there and
just put it out there.
Be vulnerable to it.
Be vulnerable to it. Be proud of it, and leave it out there. Don't ever take it down. No matter how cringy it is, just keep it because it's your work and you're putting it out there. So you should be proud of it.
What I want to tap into also, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the tattoos. Is that something that has been a hindrance for you in getting an acting role?
No, but I have had to cover these things up multiple times, like full on makeup to where it looks like I have 0 tattoos.
What's that process like? How long does that take?
To cover these up, it takes about an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I would say taking it off is the hardest part.
Is it literally like a thick cream that
they normally do a spray?
Oh, okay.
Like a spray on kind of thing, like with an air gun and everything. And then they just, they'll take me like up to here and clear everything. And you look at your arms and like, dang, that's it. I'm back to normal. I'm fresh.
I can start over again.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I've never had an issue where it's like, hey, they really want to cast you, but the tattoos, like that's never been a thing.
Because it can be easily covered.
Mm-hmm.
And from the production side of the house, if somebody wants to get into it and start making movies, what's a good starting point, or what can somebody anticipate for money-wise for decent equipment to be viable?
Yeah. Well, with technology today, everyone has it in their pocket already. You can use your phone. And one thing that a lot of people forget, even I forget, is that story is king. Story over quality every single time, because you can get engaged in the story and maybe a few people will be like, oh, that could have sounded better, or that shot could have been, that shot could have been better. But a majority of the people out there who are watching these and scrolling, they're just in it for the story. So everyone is capable these days of making something.
But to make something that is of decent quality, you can still do it on a phone? Because,
you would be surprised. So
I don't have the greatest equipment in the world, but I'm not recording it on a phone either.
Right. So, even if you were to just use a phone, the quality that a good set of lights can add to even just a phone image is gigantic. So I would say if you wanted to do like bare minimum to get a quality looking image that looks somewhat cinematic, you can start with like the iPhone 13 that has the capability of adjusting the aperture on the phone so you can get like the blurry background and the focus forefront of whatever your subject is. I'm pretty sure it's called the aperture. I could be wrong, but we'll just say it's the aperture.
I'm going to go with it because it's more than what I know.
So you can do that and have a decent set of lights, like even like the lights you're using, some small soft boxes, and you can Google cinematic lighting and look how they set their shots up and literally just copy where their light placement is, and then get some, mid-range quality lavalier microphones that you can plug into your phone and capture your audio that way, and you will have a quality looking and sounding image that will come off as cinematic. And combine that with a good story, I'd say you're in really good shape.
So starting to wrap this up, what would be the mistakes, looking back on it, what advice would you give them, mistakes that you made for somebody else not to make who wants to get into the acting business?
Don't say no. Never get to a point where you think I'm above that. At least strongly consider it. If it's something that goes against your beliefs or it's something that you physically don't want to do, I would say yes to as many things as possible. So say yes more. That's what I would say.
And when are we going to see you on a skateboard in a big movie?
Man, I don't know. That might not ever happen unless it's something that I make on my own, which is there's something that I'm currently writing, which involves a skateboard, but who knows if it'll ever get made. But you never know, man.
Never say never.
You never say never.
If anybody's got any more in-depth questions, because obviously I don't know anything about what I'm talking about when it comes to acting, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Christopher Cendana. If you really want, you can look me up on TikTok. There's a lot of funny videos out there too. That's Skate Department. And yeah, I'm pretty good about communicating with people. I feel like I'm a pretty open guy. So ask me whatever.
I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me.
Wish you the best going forward.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.